Hello friend and welcome to the Betta side of YouTube. Today we're just going to take a few moments to talk about floating plants. Floating plants are wonderful and I love having them in both of my tanks, but when I first started trying to incorporate them into my Betta tanks, I had a lot of issues with them. And when I say I had a lot of issues, I mean literally every one that I put in my tank, even duckweed, died. I was killing duckweed. That's not even really a thing, but I was doing it. So we really won't get into the specific different kinds of floating plants, but I will say that some really nice ones to have in your tank are frog bit, water lettuce, and giant duckweed. I'm not sure I would recommend duckweed unless you want a bunch of tiny little plants that get all over your arms and equipment, and not to mention, once you put them in, you really can't get them out. So that is one commitment I would highly suggest thinking over before you jump in. Today we're going to be talking about why you may be failing at having live floating plants in your tank. There are really two main reasons. One was a game changer for me, and as soon as I changed this one thing, they lived. So a lot of the problem many people have with their floating plants is that they just die. They start melting, they turn yellow. Why? One huge reason for this is that the top of the leaves are wet and they're not supposed to be wet. So if you have a lid on your tank, most people do because they're afraid of their betta jumping out. I do have another video where I talk about how to prevent your betta from jumping out of your tank while keeping your tank lidless. Some of that water from your tank is going to evaporate because it's heated, and then it is going to condense on the lid and drip back down onto the leaves. Therefore, most of the time your plants are going to stay wet all the time on the top, and they do not like that. So if you have a lid on your tank, try to find a way to get rid of it. Most betta keepers eventually go lidless. I did. Even though you do have to top off your tank a little more often, I just prefer it. I love it. I think it's prettier, and floating plants are now thriving. Second reason is that you probably don't have any fertilizer in your tank. Now, any kind of aquatic plant you have in your tank, if you have any kind of live plant, it will do best if you are adding fertilizer. Now, don't go to your garden store and grab fertilizer for flowers and veggies and plants and put that in your tank, please. That will kill your fish. There are actually specific fertilizers designed for your tank. The one that I use is Easy Green by Aquarium Co-op. You can use different brands, but I have found Easy Green to be safe for my bettas and very effective for my tank plants. This type of fertilizer is going to be perfect for your floating plants because the roots will just freely float in the water, so they will feed off of the nutrients in the water current. If you are dosing liquid fertilizer, then they will be able to get much more nutrients and they will be a whole lot happier. Now, I know I said there were two main reasons, but I did just think of another one, so I would like to add that as well. You may have too much surface agitation in your tank. Now, what does that mean? Generally, a lot of people when first starting out, they don't really think about the filter and the water output, so they end up choosing one that just absolutely gushes water. So if you have a filter that is putting out way too much water, the surface will be very rough and agitated, and likely there will be a current that keeps those plants moving. If you watch your plant and your plant is moving, and then when it gets in front of that water output and it hits it and it just slings it back around, if your plants are constantly moving around the surface, they're not going to be very happy. They like to be very still, they like to remain in one area, and I will give you an example of the top of my tank. So as you can see, because I have a sponge filter, and I always recommend a sponge filter setup, you can also find another video on my channel about how I set mine up. But there's going to be little to no surface agitation. Now, you do want a little bit just to prevent biofilm from growing over your surface, which is a topic for another video, but you do want it to have a little surface agitation, but not a lot. So as you can see in my 10-gallon tank, plants may be bobbing just a slight bit, just because the water surface is rippling a little, but my plants are not budging. They're not moving, they're not being circulated through the tank constantly. The surface and current is also a huge thing. Make sure you really don't have any current in your tank and that there's very little surface agitation. All right, friend, if you had any aha moments or any key takeaways, feel free to jot those down in the comments. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Go have fun, and I will see you in the next video.